This episode of the Carolina Sports Guy, we're going to break down this 2021-2022 upcoming roster of the Charlotte Hornets. We're going to get some positive checks of guys that we need to bring back and keep long term. We're going to get some negative check marks of guys that probably need to go, we can't afford to keep, or whatever it may be. We got a few guys who are on the fringe in between. We'll talk about them as well. Okay, guys, on this episode of the Carolina Sports Guy, I'm going to kind of talk about the plus, the positives, the negatives, and those in between on the Charlotte Hornets roster, and kind of projecting where we're going to go 2021-2022, this next upcoming season, now that the Hornet season is over. Now, before we get into today's content, I would like you to subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. Hit that, pound that like button. Give me a big thumbs up. And hit the bell notification so you can be notified of more videos like this. And go in the comments. Let me know, hey, Uncle Chucky, Carolina Sports Guy, I'd like to see more content with the Panthers or the Hurricanes or something else. Or cover this with the Hornets or one-on-one individual talk about certain players. Just let me know what you want to hear and what you don't like to hear. And we'll go from there. All right, the first check mark we need to look at is LaMelo Ball. He's got a very bright future. I think he far exceeded what we thought we were getting with the number 3 pick in the draft. Like I said, the guy's got a very bright future. Now, my only question for the Hornets is, can we go ahead and try to lock this guy up long term? And I know that's kind of premature maybe, but I'd be worried about this guy trying to get out of town or losing him because we've been mediocre. I mean, we finally made the playoffs this year, but it was a one-and-done situation where we lost to Indiana. You know, just about a month or two ago, we were sitting there in the 4th spot. Looked like we could climb up to 3. And because of injuries, they kind of undid us. I'd blame injuries more than anything. We just had too many guys go down. We couldn't finish the season out. And I think that's kind of where we started to unravel. Not saying we'd have won all the games down the list, but I definitely think it made a big difference from us finishing like we did at number 9 or 10. And we probably should have finished, maybe at least 6. LaMelo Ball, I'd just be trying to lock this guy up long term because he's definitely a future bright spot, gives a star in the making for the Hornets. Number 2, Miles Bridges, very impactful player. This guy we got at Michigan State a few years ago, he's starting to blossom. He's got one of the most thunderous dunks, such an aggressive play under the board. He's got a nice touch from the outside as well. And I just love his game. Miles Bridges is very tough. He's a highlight reel, and you put LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges together, nice 1-2 combination. And definitely a check mark for him. We got to start looking at keeping him long term down the road. Next is Gordon Hayward. Now, a lot of people will balk about Gordon Hayward and say, we don't really need to keep this guy around. Look at his injuries. And yeah, he did have a horrific injury with the Celtics. He come out of Butler. He was drafted by Utah. The Hornets tried to get him a few years back. And Utah kept his restricted rights, and we matched our offer. He goes to Boston, plays, had a horrific injury, like I said. We ended up getting him out of Boston this year. Paid him a lot of money, maybe more than we should. Early on, he looked really good. And he looked like this guy's definitely a starter for us. He gets us a lot of scoring. He's a great player. Main thing with him is staying healthy. If he can stay healthy, it could definitely be worth the price that we're paying for him. If he doesn't, has nagging injuries, might have overpaid. But I definitely think he is a check, a positive mark, somebody we need to keep, and just hope the injuries kind of stay away from him in the future. Next is Terry Rozier. Now, Terry Rozier came in with no fanfare because Kemba Walker, by far, for many Hornet fans, is beloved. And a lot of people hate to see him leave. I don't even think Kemba wanted to leave. But if Kemba would have stayed, folks, kind of what we had to pay him, it would have crippled this franchise to a point that we would have only been mediocre to bad because we wouldn't have been able to have any depth on this team. We wouldn't have ever really start over. We had to move on, and it did suck. If we were close to winning or had a winning roster, I could have saved Kevin Kemba. But you got to look at what we got with Terry Rozier. He won some games for this year. He had some 40-point games, some high 30s, did real well, won some games at the buzzer for us. For me, it was a pretty even swap. Kemba Walker averaged 19.3 points a game this year. Terry Rozier's 20.4. Advantage, Terry Rozier. Rebounds, Terry Rozier, 4.9 rebounds a game. Kemba was 4.0. Advantage, Terry Rozier. Now the assist, Kemba had 4.9 assists per game, while Terry Rozier only had 4.2 assists per game. So that advantage goes to Kemba. But all in all, we're pretty evenly matched. I don't think we lost anything by going around and getting Terry Rozier. And in many ways, I think Kemba, when he played here, he always felt the weight of the world was on his shoulders because it's like he didn't have any help. And that's not the case with Terry Rozier now, although some games he took over and was the man. So I think that we've kind of actually come out ahead or pretty much even with the Rozier trade. Or not say a trade, but trading out where we lost Kemba Walker and picked up Rozier. But definitely a positive check mark for Terry Rozier. Next on the list, P.J. Washington. You know, he's been a couple of years out of Kentucky. He's a good to great player. He has more finesse than other big men like Miles Bridges. Not as aggressive as Miles Bridges. He's got a really pretty shot from long range. Now, he's had some games where he's thrown up zeros and a couple points and disappeared. But he did have one game, I believe he had like a 40-some point game for the Hornets. Might have been 50. Looked really good. But he's still a good blossoming player that I think the Hornets need to keep. Next on the list, the guy we need to keep, second-round pick out of Duke, Vernon Carey Jr. Showed a lot of good promise early on. He just needs more growth. Went down and played in the G League with Greensboro. Just needs more playing time. I definitely think that guy can give us a lot of depth playing in the middle. And I think he's a check mark. You got to give the guy, just let him grow. Another guy we drafted in the second round last year from San Diego State was Jalen McDaniels. Kind of fronted his pick at first because he had a little bit of legal problems, some issues. Came in and finally played. And as the season went on, he showed some promise. He had an upside. He's got a long way to go, but he does have the tools to reach his potential, be a good role player. He's just got to keep improving. I think he could be a valuable asset. I'm going to give him a small check mark. Now, guy I want to give a check mark to, but I can see us losing, is Devontae Graham. Devontae Graham, undrafted guy we got out of Kansas years ago. Be awesome. He's not an undrafted. It's a restricted free agent is what he is. Can we afford to keep him though? With LaMelo Ball here needing to pay him, Terry Rozier's got another year on his contract or so. Can we afford to keep three guards? With the injury he had this year with LaMelo Ball going out, and even at times Devontae Graham went out, Terry Rozier missed a couple of games. Having those three guys as a three-headed point guard / off guard, very valuable. Our guard depth was very valuable this year. And when we lost a couple of them, we really couldn't go anywhere. So it would be good to have Devontae Graham in the backcourt, but can we afford it? Can we afford to pay Devontae Graham, but somebody else might be able to pay him in that position? So affordability is the key. I don't think it's, do we not want Devontae Graham? I think we do. How much depth we've got at the position and money, the affordability to keep him is going to be the big thing. Now we get on our negatives. Bismack Biyombo. We drafted him. He goes to Toronto. He ends up going to Orlando. We bring him back. He's an unrestricted free agent. I could see him definitely departing. What other options are available? We definitely need improvement on our roster. I think it's time for him to set sail. We're going to find out, though, if we can't bring anybody in, he doesn't sign, we might have to do this. But I think it's time for Bismack Biyombo to say bye-bye. Now the Martin twins, Caleb and Cody Martin. It's hard to give them a negative or positive. They are liabilities on the court at times, but times have been good. Now, Cody Martin, to me, is a better twins if you want to keep one. He has a more offensive game. I've seen a spark when he's been in the game at times. At times I do see some weaknesses. He is good as a player off the bench. I don't mind that. Caleb doesn't get in as much. He's more defensive-minded. Just see some weaknesses in his game as well. If we can find somebody else better on the roster, that's what we need to do. Now, Brad Wanamaker, it's not really his fault. We brought him in at the trade deadline because we had injuries at the guard position. We were trying to make that, playoff push. Comes in, we do get the 10 spot. We lose that one-game series with Indiana. Season's over. I think it was merely a trade deadline acquisition to help the Hornets because they were injured at the guard spot. I don't think we'll be retaining the service, so I think he's gone. Cody Zeller. He's an unrestricted free agent. He has bird rights, so we can match it. But he's going to get paid, whether it's here or somewhere else. But what are options do we truly have? We need a more polished center. And I like Zeller's game. Plays really good with the guards we have. He just doesn't, he's not dominant enough at that position. So I won't be surprised if he goes. It's a small percentage that he'll come back if he can't find anybody else. But I definitely think somebody's going to pay him. And just kind of like Kaminsky, I think he's going to be out of here. Now, I'll bring up a guy who's not even on the roster right now, Nick Batum. I know he's not on the roster, but we still got to eat this guy's contract for 2 more years. He's taking up money. So I put Nick Batum on here because he's on the books because of that 2-year stretch provision. You can't not mention him even though he's on the roster because he's eating up the money. So throwing him out there because it's negative. I just have to do that. Couple guys here. Nick Richards, young developing player, just depth. I'm neutral on him. I mean, got to have some guys to round out the bench. Nate Darling is a restricted free agent. Not much to lose here if he's retained, but if we do, it's just going to be a depth piece. Grant Ryler, young player on the fringe. He's just the back end of the bench. If we keep him, no problem. If we can improve on it, we need to. Finally, the last guy I'm going to get on here. I'm on defense. When we drafted him, I was disappointed we didn't go for Donovan Mitchell. It's a shooting guard, Malik Monk from Kentucky. Now, the minus, I don't see us retaining him, but if we do and he improves on this past season, it would be very good for the Hornets. I still don't see him coming back, but you never know. Early on in his career, he was a disappointment. He wasn't consistent, didn't play defense, got suspended, I think, for some drug use, some issues. When he came back at the beginning of this year, I just knew he was gone. He couldn't get in the coach's playing rotation. I said, this guy's gone. Finally cracked it, finally got in, started getting out of the doghouse. He started having some games, man, where he was playing well on one end of the floor. He was shooting threes consistently. He was dunking the ball, good passes, good shooting, played well, won a couple games for us. If the guy keeps improving like he is, I'd love to have Malik Monk back. But if he's a restricted free agent and he demands a lot of money, somebody will pay him and it won't be us. But if we can come to an agreement that's not overpaid and he can improve, we might take a gamble and bring him back. It's hard to say. So what do you guys think? Who would you replace? Who would you like to see us get in the upcoming draft? Free agency-wise, what would you do? Who would you let go? Who you definitely want to keep? Let me know in the comments. Give me a big like. Subscribe to this channel. It's free. And hit that bell notification so you'll be notified of more videos like this. And we'll see you next time on the Carolina Sports Guy.